Welcome to the Scandinavian Mind podcast, our weekly show about how technology is changing the creative industries. Today on the program, a special report from Copenhagen Fashion Week. The leading Nordic fashion week took place this week in a somewhat rainy Copenhagen. We were there both as observers at the shows, but also with our own talk schedule that took place at the trade show CIFF. Today we will hear from three voices from inside Fashion Week: Rose Svane, up-and-coming designer; Alice Bouleau, principal head of creative at the Paris-based recruiter Sterling International; and Gonzalo Catalán, founder and CEO of fashion and distribution company Welcome. In this episode, we will discuss why Gen Z are betting on arts and crafts, which shows are people talking about the most, the industry temperature from the brands at the trade shows, and we'll get a preview of our own beauty innovation talk session that took place at CIFF. My name is Konrad Olsson, editor-in-chief and founder of Scandinavian Mind, and with me is my colleague, my man on the ground, Johan Magnusson. You just came back from Copenhagen. How are you, Johan?
Yeah, it's a lot of impressions. It's a bit hard to digest, but it was a fun 3 days in Copenhagen. Yeah,
that's why we do the show, to be able to digest the impressions and get them fresh from the ground. Let's give a bit of an overview of the week. What were your personal impressions? What are people talking about? It seemed like it was a bit rainy.
Yeah, the weather was, of course, the main topic. Not only rainy, but also very, very cold.
Yeah.
Typical Scandinavian summer weather. If you reduce it with the 5 degrees or even 7 or 8 degrees. We even had designers moving location and time slots due to the weather. And they had to switch location, and I felt really bad for the models at certain shows, like the models wearing Spring-Summer 2024 collections right next to the water in pouring rain. Also, in the main shows, they of course take place in the evening. And that's when it's even colder.
Gotcha. This is typical Nordic conversation topics then, the weather. So what about the sort of temperature in the industry? I mean, I felt like there was a really strong schedule this year. Also, we have some news around the merged trade show CIFF and Revolver. And we'll hear from people in this episode that you've interviewed people on the ground. But what were your impressions around just generally? Is it an optimistic tone?
Yeah, definitely. And I think this edition, people spoke even more about how Copenhagen Fashion Week is actually a front runner when it comes to being a sustainable fashion week.
Right.
It's quite exotic for instance, my editor colleagues from Asia or the Mediterranean countries to create a fashion week based on sustainable principles. And that was quite a they worked with this for like 4 or 5, 6 years, but this edition people spoke about it even more. And regarding the atmosphere, and we are in challenging times, but people were optimistic. But the weather was, again, not the best thing for the people's mood, of course.
It's interesting that the sustainability angle is kind of really pushing through and resonating with the international audience. I mean, we've obviously covered this at length in our podcast before. We had Fredrik Larsen on the podcast. He was part of our talk schedule at CIFF last year or last season. He was part of writing the sustainability strategy for Copenhagen Fashion Week, and if you're curious, you can go back and listen to that. What in terms of the shows, in terms of the clothes, in terms of the people listening, were there special aspects of this sustainability strategy that people were talking about in any form?
Not specifically, but the brands participating, they now have to adopt to certain rules, like minimum standards, since I think 1 or 1.5 years ago.
Yeah,
and that people didn't talk about that much, but it's like the entire industry. we have come to a certain point where at least we can speak about like minimal standards, and then we can take it from there, because it requires huge transformation from a very, very big industry. But it's of course important when such a big event as Copenhagen Fashion Week can take some kind of lead in this transition, I think.
Well, we'll get back to this topic, I'm sure, not least in our own transformation conference coming up later in August. Sorry for plugging that so soon in the episode. Let's get into some of the conversations that you had on the ground. You met with a very interesting up-and-coming designer called Rose Svane. I believe it was in one of the showrooms. Talk about that meeting.
She was part of the lineup for Migliorini venue. A seasonal, they're always at Copenhagen Fashion Week. It's a 2-day event for trade or professionals like media and buyers and such. It's always very well curated, new brands, established brands, but with a very hand-picked feeling. And of course, many of the founders and designers are present and showing their collections. And one of them was Rose. She showcased her crochet designs.
What's that?
So she's not she is a designer to some extent, but she never her pieces are couture-like, I would say. They're very colorful, and they're not for sale. So it's only to show. It's only show pieces, and the thing is that she provides the knitting instructions on how to create them as a private person, or for you and me, Konrad. You can give it to your daughter, and she's also like an author. She's now working on her second book. And her first book with do-it-yourself designs, like I think 15 of her best knitting instructions or knitting pieces were available in the first book, and it's been translated to I think 3 or 4 languages. So it's not a bestseller, but she's become like a name. And in Copenhagen, she's quite big.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't know her as a designer, but I knew of her as an author because my wife is really into knitting, and she had this book. So, but that doesn't, the most interesting thing is how she resonates with the new generations and how sort of arts and crafts is entering this new target group. Talk about that.
As she'll mention in the interview, when she started, she had a quite or very old target group, but over time it has become younger, and now with the new generation growing up, popularly named Gen Z, of course, they're very keen to. They are known to be very keen to get a result of what they are up to, They can perform things, they can stick to things, but they want to see an end result.
Instant gratification, yeah.
Definitely.
All right, let's hear it. This is Rose Svane, up-and-coming arts and craft designer that Johan met at the Migliorini showroom.
What did you do yesterday? It was a special day.
It was. I started my morning off here at Paustian, where we had a very big breakfast with Migliorini and Eurowoman, and then I hosted a crochet workshop with the brand called Wool and the Gang, which is a very cool yarn company. And so that was my day yesterday.
And you launched a web shop as well.
Oh, yes, of course. I launched my very first web shop yesterday, where I sell individual patterns so you can make your own crochet pieces.
And who's the target group? It's slightly younger than you might expect.
It is. It's for the young crafters because crocheting and knitting has always been like very much for the old audience. So I wanted to kind of like bring new life into this beautiful craft, and so all the young people could start making their own pieces and express themselves through crocheting.
What's the most common feedback you get from your end consumer? Or you've also released a book your book readers?
Yes, I have. I feel like many of the people who make my pieces, they love, of course, the design, but they also love the process because they get away from social media and away from their phone and just really dive into this meditative state of crocheting and making something with your hands. So they feel very relaxed after doing a piece, and they also feel satisfied that they have their own brand new item to wear.
This feels very much Gen Z, that they want to have a result of the job that they put into their the effort. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's also a big thing for me. I would never do anything that I didn't, that didn't have an amazing output, because I feel like our generation are very scared of wasting their time. So that's also why we love crafting, because it takes a lot of time, but we get an amazing product that's not a waste of time to end up with.
Is there a specific reason why you don't ever sell any of your pieces?
I started selling my pieces in the very beginning, but it took way too much time, because one crochet piece can take up to months to complete, so it made more sense for me to create a pattern so many people could create it at the same time.
Co-creation.
Exactly, yeah.
Do they have enough patience to work several months for a particular piece?
I feel like they do. Not all of my designs takes as long to make. I have some that is like you can make a hat in a day if you want to. So there's for every type of patience.
And what can you say about your book that was released the other year? It's only available in Danish, right?
It's being published in a few months in English, and it has just been published in Deutsch and Finnish and Dutch. So it's getting there, and the book is a collection of 15 of my patterns and about 100 pages of crochet techniques. So it's very good if you're a beginner for this craft. So yeah, that's my book.
How did you yourself come into crochet and this technique and the aesthetics?
I started crocheting because I needed something that could help me relax and wind down. So I learned crocheting. My grandma learned me how to crochet, and then I just kept doing it and have been doing it every day for 4 years now, without a break at all.
Every day?
Every day, yeah. Even when I'm sick, I'm still crocheting in bed.
It's your meditation?
It is. I really love it. I don't know what to do without it. It's so relaxing.
And what's your own background?
I actually don't have a background in any design or anything. I just feel like I have a natural talent for it.
Typical Danish answer. You're self-taught, or no? Your grandma helped you, but
my grandma helped me.
And
start,
YouTube tutorials now.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. A lot of YouTube watching.
And what's your coming plans? To establish the web shop, or going on a book tour to Finland and the Netherlands? Or?
I'm actually at the moment writing a new book that's being published May next year. So that takes a lot of my time at the moment. And then I have a lot of workshops here in Denmark during the fall. And then next year I would love to go on a little tour with the book, because that would make sense with the old book being published in English.
All right, that was Rose Svane, a designer in Copenhagen and somewhat of a knitwear shooting star. So, Johan, I'm curious about the shows. I know you had busy doing stuff at CIFF, and you weren't able to watch most of the shows. But what were some of the shows that people were talking about the most during Copenhagen Fashion Week?
One of the most important aspects of the event is that it has actually lifted certain local names into sort of global fame. We had Soland, Woodwood, Henrik Vibskov, and then we saw other brand names coming up, and now there's a new wave. So the organization is really, really good at promoting new names and support them monetary and with how to promote them. And they're also, of course, at the forefront when it comes to sustainability. Those new names, the emerging names coming up now, and if we talk about talk of the town for shows, of course, the garment was a huge success, and Sax Pots, but they were unlucky with the weather, and a bunch of we saw. We saw Aröge Hove opening the entire week, and she's of course award-winning and super exciting, both when it comes to textile innovation and sustainability. She's a front runner there.
Right. Well, I got a bit of a FOMO when I saw the photos from the Ganni show. I don't think you caught that. You flew back to Stockholm, and also Sunflower, one of my favorite menswear brands. They seem to have a really cozy, nice show with a bit of music attached to it. So let's talk about designers. You met with Alice Bouleau. She's been a speaker at a transformation conference earlier this year in Helsinki. Why did you meet up with Alice?
It was her first time in Copenhagen, so it was exciting to hear her fresh view. And she's, of course, quite into new designers, so it was interesting to hear her insights. We met outside Paulina Russo, their show, and they are the winner of Zalando Visionary Award, previously Zalando Sustainability Award, and she was super excited about their first Nordic show. They're based in London, and we will publish an interview with them, I think, today on Scandinavianmind.com. And yeah, she's just full of insights from a French perspective, based in France, of course, and yeah.
All right, let's hear it from Alice Bouleau, Principal and Head of Creative at the Paris-based recruiter Sterling International.
We met in Helsinki at our conference, and now we meet here. It's your first time. What's your impressions so far?
I think it's very interesting because it's bringing talents not only from Denmark but also from Nordic countries, and I think it's good because union makes trends, and it's good to see all of these amazing emerging talents here. The most impressive things, I think, is the high standard when it comes to sustainability, and having a fashion week that's mostly dedicated to brands that are looking at sustainable solutions for fashion. I think that's super interesting and promising.
How do they work? The brands, what makes them stand out compared to other international fashion weeks?
I think there's a bit of everything in terms of creativity. So obviously there are all different kinds of styles. But what really stands out to me is that their common thread is the fact that all of these brands are looking for new solutions, when I think the main fashion weeks are not really, forward thinking when it comes to it.
Can it develop even further? Can the fashion week and the brands, they can do much more. What are the next steps here, you think?
I think it would be to inspire actually other fashion weeks to follow the lead, and perhaps then to have brands coming in, from other countries as well, that would meet those standards, to do like exceptional shows and really just raise the bar everywhere, basically.
What's your favorite show so far?
It's only the beginning, so it's very difficult. I really liked Rolf for sure. I also I think Saxpot was super interesting, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to Paulina Russo, to be honest. I think it's probably kind of like the future of fashion, showing that creativity, craftsmanship, technical innovation and sustainability can all come together, and that's giving me hope for the future of fashion. I hope they don't disappoint now.
It's got to be tricky also for the new and emerging brands. That it can be expensive being more sustainable.
Absolutely.
That's always the status quo, right?
Exactly. And today, when you're a young designer launching your brand, you have to think, obviously, aside from just doing great collections and being creative and having your signature, you have to think about marketing and communication, you have to think about the commercial part of it, but now you also have to think about sustainability and ethics in general. So it's just like so many new criteria that today they have to face. So pretty intense.
And what we can also look forward to is improved weather, right?
Yeah, exactly. That would be great. That would be really good.
To get rid of the raincoat.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, that was Alice Bouleau at Sterling International. Right, at the end of this show, let's move on to the trade shows, and specifically CIFF X Revolver, as I believe the big show is now named the combined CIFF and Revolver show that has moved accumulated into the Bella Center. Previously, obviously, Revolver was set in the Oxnahallen, the old meatpacking district, but now they've consolidated everything to Bella Center, which I think it's a good thing. I think generally when I speak to people in the industry, that seems to be a positive thing. Certainly when we were there, the last edition of CIFF, there was obviously a lot of halls that was empty. So I guess they needed to fill those up somehow. And just generally, the people, think that a combined trade fair experience is better for the industry overall. Was that your impression on the ground as well?
Definitely. People were super positive about this move. And of course, there's a lot to improve given that, but it was the first time, of course. And we need to think about the future of trade fairs. And we can't have two competing ones in such a relatively small city as Copenhagen. We all need to think of the convenience for the visitors, like the super stressed buyers. If they shall show up at those trade fairs, they need to have it convenient. They can't just spend times on travel back and forth between different trade fairs.
No.
So people were super positive, and also it was weatherproof because it was inside. So usually at the summer edition of CIFF, it can be just as much people outside in the sun as inside. No, of course, I'm exaggerating, but people were staying inside definitely, and pouring rain outside.
Of course, I mean, Copenhagen is one of the most beautiful experiences when the weather is right, and I don't think people used to calling Bella Center. That's not their USP, being indoors in the fair halls, but today it was perhaps. You met up with Gonzalo Catalán, founder and CEO of the fashion distribution company Welcome. Why did you speak to Gonzalo?
He's one of the leading names in Scandinavia, and he has a lot of power. And what he's known for is his very successful venture, and they've grown tremendously. And perhaps most of all for bringing iconic brands back to market and make them creditful again, if you may say. And he's a super nice guy. He meets a lot of people. So if you want to get the temperature of the industry, he's quite he's the right guy to talk to. He's been at the trade fairs for like a decade, so he was a good person to interview about comparing.
All right, let's hear it. Here's Gonzalo Catalán, founder and CEO of the fashion distributing company Welcome.
You have quite a track record. How have the last few years been?
Yeah, I mean, the business have been good for us. Obviously, the pandemic was a little bit of a challenge, as for everyone else, but we have managed to to navigate quite well through the market, and we still find ways to increase numbers and distribution.
In particular, you've managed to reintroduce several iconic brands to the market and gained big market shares and such. What are the secrets to success there?
Yeah, correct. I mean, we started with reintroducing Fila in Scandinavia 6-7 years ago, which was our first relaunch of a 90s brand. We also did Buffalo's reintroduction a couple of years ago. We are in the middle of reintroducing True Religion. And I mean, I think it's a matter of kind of finding the time for the trend. I mean, we all saw the 90s trend coming. Perhaps we did a little bit earlier than everybody else. The same now with True Religion. The launch has been fantastic, and I think we can everybody see the trend with the low waist and everything, and yeah, it's been good. I think we we have been listening to trends and just trying to find the right brands to attract.
Because it's a very challenging retail landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, working with brands, I think also makes it a little bit easier, especially in today's market, to just not have a good product, but to also have a good potential, like a powerful brand behind the product as well. So that has definitely been a win, I think.
This is the first season where we only have one fair, and you've been here for a decade or so.
Yeah, correct.
What are your feelings? People seem very optimistic, and the only problem is the weather, but we're inside.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, to be honest, I'm kind of excited because to have everything under one roof, I think makes it easier for both exhibitors and visitors. We get a lot more traffic all day, like even traffic throughout the days. So day 2 so far so good for sure.
And for me, this also shows that there is certainly a future for trade fairs as a format.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a strong believer in wholesale. I'm a strong believer in retail. And I think meeting people physically and having the opportunity to connect is what we need for sure.
If you were to pick one thing for spring-summer 2024 and you can't say through religion, what shall we keep an eye open for?
Wow, I mean, I believe strongly in how do I say this in the correct context without sounding strange? But I believe that the trend on women's is getting a bit more feminine. For me, it's been a bit too masculine in a way for quite some time, and we're seeing the feminine silhouettes come back even at a younger age. I think if you can listen to that and interpret that in a good way, I think you will find some nice pointers where we're headed.
All right, that was Gonzalo Catalán, interviewed by Johan on site at CIFF X Revolver, the newly combined trade show in Copenhagen. Okay, Johan, let's close out the show with some impressions from your debut, let's say, of being a moderator on our Beauty Innovation Talk. So I was obviously not able to come to Copenhagen this year, but you very strongly and confidently took the reins of our talks collaboration that we have with CIFF. It's the second year running that we do a talks collaboration with them. And again, we were focusing on our beauty innovation concept, which is, of course, now launched as a newsletter. Now we're able to do this Beauty Innovation Talks in conjunction with our newsletter to the audience at CIFF. What were your impressions from doing the talk, and perhaps mention a little bit of the guests and the topics?
So the topic was how to innovate beauty communication. We had a very strong panel of Esteban Villanueva from Spalt PR, used to be the editor of Vogue Scandinavia for beauty. And then we had Molly Rådberg from Mantle, the Swedish fast-growing CBD beauty brand. And then we had Louise Emil Rind Nygaard, the sustainability specialist at the Rudolph Care, the leading Danish beauty brand. I also interviewed him afterwards, and he's such into sustainability. And it was interesting because they all had quite different angles and different perspectives from the industry, and we could produce an important conversation. We had a full house, which made me very, very happy because the trade fair is so busy. And but in general, the talks were, we were not, of course, the only one having talks. And in general, people really showed up at the talks, which I think is a great thing for people to rest for a while, to get insights, and for leading industry names like trend agencies. They really want to come to Copenhagen and present their works. We had, for instance, Claire Paris there with a huge booth, and they presented trend talks for fashion and beauty, and they're quite a strong name in the industry. So it's great to have them there as well.
Well, wonderful. I'm getting a serious FOMO now hearing you talk about this, but we will come back to this talk that we did, our beauty innovation talks at CIFF Copenhagen, in this very feed. We will publish it as a podcast here. If you want to know about the launch of this conversation, first of all, of course, sign up to our new Insights newsletter, Beauty Innovation, that we launched before summer. It's been running now for a few weeks. The feedback we're getting is really, really positive from the industry. This really felt like something that was needed on the market. So sign up to this. Visit scandinavianmind.com/beauty innovation. And of course, before we close out, don't miss the upcoming Stockholm edition of Transformation Conference taking place during Nordic Fabric Fair on August 31st. Secure your seat. Visit scandinavianmind.com/transconf to sign up, or just go to scandinavianmind.com. You'll find all these links there. Johan, any closing words from this edition of Copenhagen? Anything you wish for? Any product you've seen? Anything that really sparked your imagination?
I think it was great that CIFF once again for the second consecutive season had a dedicated beauty section, and the reception was really good. And they also had the opportunity to invite really high-end buyers from like retailers, of course, and a strongly curated section. And I really hope to see it for the next season. And I did a lot of interviews. I produced a lot of content, which will be available through Beauty Innovation newsletter.
All right. Thank you, Johan, for being our man on the ground. Until next week, goodbye.
Bye.